good day. I hope you're having a wonderful day today. I am your host, Ivy Henetti, and I'd like to welcome you all to my podcast, Ethics Unveiled, Navigating Social Dilemmas in the Philippines, where we explore the social dilemmas and embark on a journey through the ethical scene to highlight some of the most important issues. The goal of this podcast is to provide a platform to delve and discuss complex ethical issues that arise in various social contexts within the society, with a particular focus on 5 key social ethical issues in the Philippines, which includes corruption in government, human rights violations, environmental degradation, income inequality, and extrajudicial killings. Joining us today are our two co-hosts, Ms. Shara Moreno and Ms. Richella Brital. And in this episode, we will discuss one of the 5 social dilemmas, the human rights violations. Our co-hosts will explore and share their insights on the root causes and consequences of human rights violations, its impact on the Filipino people, and potential solutions to address them. So before we begin in this episode, our co-hosts will introduce first themselves.
I am Shara Moreno, one of your co-hosts in this podcast. And this episode, we aim to explore the nuances of these social dilemmas, their impact on society, and potential solutions to promote a more just and equitable future.
Hello, I am also your co-host, Richella Brital, and by fostering dialogue and raising awareness about these ethical challenges, we hope to inspire meaningful action and encourage critical thinking among you, our listeners.
Yes. So in today's episode, the ethical issue that we have chosen to discuss is the human rights violations. As we all know, human rights are the rights that all people have, no matter who they are or what they are. These rights include the right to life, liberty and security, justice, equality and non-discrimination, and the freedom of thought and religion. And when any of these rights are denied or abused, human rights violations occurs, and these can take many forms, such as physical or sexual abuse, discrimination, deprivation of freedom, or denial access to education or health care. As we discuss this ethical issue, we will also discuss some ethical theories, such as the feminist ethics, cultural relativism, rights-based ethics, utilitarianism, distributive justice, and non-libertarianism. Some context and statistics related to the human rights violations in the Philippines includes extrajudicial killings. In December 2017, an annual report released by the Duterte administration said 3,967 drug personalities had been killed during police operations from July 1, 2016 to November 27, 2017. And on June 18, 2019, official data released by the National Police Headquarters say that from July 1, 2016 to May 31, 2019, there had already been 6,600 drug suspects killed during police operations.
And according to the Philippine Alliance of Human Rights Advocates, there were at least 27,000 extrajudicial killings under the Duterte administration war on drugs from June 2016 to December 2020.
And media censorship. You know what, Ivy and Shara? Reporters Without Borders 2021 World Press Freedom Index ranked the Philippines 138 out of 180 countries, highlighting the government's crackdown on critical media outlets and journalists. That year, 2021 Ivy, was the 4th consecutive year that the Philippines dropped in the index, which ranks 180 countries according to the level of freedom given to journalists in a particular global.
The International Labour Organization estimates that there are about 5.5 million child laborers in the Philippines, with the majority engaged in hazardous work. In the Philippines, as of 2020, there were 872,300 children aged 5 to 17 years old in child labor, or 2.8% of the age group's total population, with around 31,169,600, according to data released by the Philippine Statistics Authority. The figures lead from 1,046,500 children aged 5 to 17 in child labor recorded in 2019, or 3.4% of the total 30,497,900 children in the same age group that same year.
The BSED also noted that children belonging to the older age groups, 5 to 17 years, were more likely to work than the younger ones. Majority of working children belong to the age group 15 to 17 years of age, accounting for 68.9% of the total working children in 2020 and 67.4% in 2019.
Then women's rights. Violence against women is deemed to be closely linked with the unequal power relation between women and men, otherwise known as gender-based violence. As defined by the UN Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women on 1993, VOW is any act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to women, including threats of such acts, coercion of arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or private life. Gender-based violence is any violence inflicted on women because of their sex. In the Philippine Commission on Women, or the PCW, 1 in 4 women in the country experiences physical or sexual violence. Additionally, the United Nations Children's Fund, or UNICEF, reports that only 54% Filipino girls aged 15 to 19 believe they have the right to decide on matters related to their sexuality.
Then migrant workers' rights. The Philippines Overseas Employment Administration (POEA) reports that there are over 2.2 million Filipinos working abroad, with many facing exploitation and abuse. A study by Institute for Labor Studies found that 40% of overseas Filipino workers experience forced labor or debt bondage.
The Philippines is among the world's most vulnerable countries to climate change, with indigenous peoples and local communities often bearing the brunt of environmental degradation. A report by the Asian Development Bank found that 40% of the country's population lives in areas affected by environmental degradation, with poverty rates in these areas being twice as high as in other areas.
And some real-life examples or cases of these human rights violations in the Philippines includes political repression. The country has experienced political repression, particularly against activists and critics of the government. This includes arbitrary arrest, detention without trial, and trumped-up charges.
In media censorship, the Philippines has a history of media censorship, particularly under authoritarian regimes. This includes the shutdown of critical media outlets, harassment of journalists, and self-censorship due to fear of reprisal.
Despite the laws against child labor, the Philippines has a significant problem with children being exploited in various industries, including agriculture, domestic work, and entertainment. And this often leads to physical and psychological harm, as well as denial of education.
Also, women's rights. While the Philippines has made progress in women's rights, there are still significant challenges. This includes gender-based violence, discrimination in employment and education, and limited access to reproductive health services. Violence against women includes, but is not limited to the following acts. Physical violence or the act that includes bodily harm. Sexual violence or the act that is sexual in nature committed against a woman or her child, and psychological violence or the act of commission that causes or is likely to cause mental or emotional suffering of the victim.
Then the LGBTQIA+ rights. The Philippines has made significant progress in recognizing LGBTQIA+ rights, but there are still discrimination and violence against members of the community, which includes hate crimes, discrimination in employment and education, and lack of legal recognition for same-sex relationships.
And the indigenous rights. The Philippines has a large indigenous populations, but they often face discriminations. And the human rights abuses, which includes land grabbing, forced evictions, and violence against indigenous leaders who defend their rights.
Now, let's analyze the human rights violations through the lens of various ethical theories, which is the feminist ethics, cultural relativism, rights-based ethics, utilitarianism, distributive justice, and libertarianism. Feminist ethics. Feminist ethics ethics emphasizes the importance of gender equality and the rights of women. In the context of the Philippines, women's rights are severely violated. There have been reports of gender-based violence, including rape and other forms of sexual assault, committed by both state agents and the non-state actors. Feminist ethics would argue that these violations are unacceptable and that the government should prioritize addressing these issues, protecting women and girls from harm and promoting gender equality. The cultural relativism. This suggests that we should respect the values and beliefs of different cultures, even if they conflict with our own. In the case of the Philippines, human rights violations are widespread and not limited to specific cultural practices. For example, the government's war on drugs that have resulted in thousands of extrajudicial killings, which is inconsistent with international human rights standards. Some may argue that the government's war on drugs and the resulting human rights violations are justified based on cultural norms and values. However, cultural relativism may not be an appropriate framework for addressing these issues, but it can also be used to argue that these violations are a result of the imposition of Western values and practices on a non-Western society.
The rights-based ethics it emphasizes the importance of respecting and protecting individual rights. In the context of the Philippines, there are numerous human rights violations, including extrajudicial killings, child labor, violation of women's rights, and the government war on drugs, which has been criticized for violating the rights of individuals suspected of drug-related offenses. Rights-based ethics would argue that these violations are unacceptable and the government should prioritize addressing these issues and holding perpetrators accountable to ensure that individuals' rights are respected and protected.
In utilitarianism suggests that we should act in ways that maximize the overall happiness or well-being of society, and that actions are morally right if they produce the greatest good for the greatest number of people. In the context of the Philippines, there are significant issues related to poverty, environmental degradation, and human rights violations. Some may argue that the government's war on drugs is justified because it has led to decrease in drug-related crime and has improved public safety, and that addressing these issues could lead to greater happiness and well-being for many people.
Distributive justice, it focuses on the fair distribution of wealth, resources, and opportunities within a society. It is concerned with ensuring that the benefits of economic growth and development are shared equitable among all members of society, regardless of their social status, ethnicity, or gender. For example, many people in poverty are forced to work in dangerous and exploitative conditions, which can lead to human rights violations. Distributive justice would argue that the government should prioritize addressing these inequalities and ensuring that resources are distributed more fairly.
In libertarianism emphasizes individual liberty and the protection of property rights. Libertarians believe that the best way to achieve a just society is through voluntary exchange and private property ownership rather than government intervention or the distribution of wealth. They argue that the government should prioritize protecting individuals' liberties and reducing its interference in people's lives, that individuals should be free to keep and use the fruits of their labor, and that market forces will naturally lead to a more equitable distribution of resources over time. However, some libertarians acknowledge that issues of poverty and inequality may arise in purely libertarian society and advocate for charitable giving and private initiatives to address these problems.
Now, let's discuss the implications, applications, and the potential solutions of this ethical issue. Implications include incorporating feminist ethics and cultural relativism into libertarianism can lead to a more inclusive and diverse perspective, but it may also challenge traditional libertarian views on individualism and limited government intervention. Rights-based ethics and utilitarianism can complement each other in promoting individual rights and freedoms, while also considering the collective good. However, balancing these two perspectives can be challenging, especially when it comes to issues like healthcare and education. Also, Also, distributive justice can help address inequality and promote economic mobility, but it can also lead to tensions between individual responsibility and government redistribution of resources.
And challenges includes incorporating multiple ethical perspectives into libertarianism can lead to disagreements and conflict within the movement. This can make it difficult to reach consensus or policies issues and may weaken the overall cohesion of the movement. Balancing individual rights and freedoms with collective responsibility can be challenging, especially when it comes to issues like climate change and public health. Libertarians may struggle to find common ground on policies that require collective action to address these issues. And ensuring that policies promoting equality and distributive justice do not undermine individual liberty and property rights is a significant challenge. There is a risk of creating unintended consequences or disincentives for hard work and innovation.
Some potential solutions include encourage open dialogue and debate within the libertarian movement to foster greater understanding and acceptance of diverse perspectives. Emphasize the importance of evidence-based policy making and empirical research to inform policy decisions. Develop policies that promote economic mobility and opportunity while also addressing inequality. This could include investing in education and training programs, supporting small businesses and promoting innovation and entrepreneurship, and encourage voluntary cooperations and mutual aid among individuals and communities to address shared challenges without relying on government intervention. This can help promote collective responsibility while also respecting individual autonomy and freedom.
So now, let's explore into our different perspectives about these ethical issues, the human rights violations. For me, human rights are about ensuring that every individual is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their race, gender, religion, or any other factor.
I agree, but I think that there are cultural differences that can affect our understanding of human rights violations. For example, in some cultures, certain practices may be considered acceptable that we will see as violations in our own culture.
That's a really interesting point. I think it's important to recognize these differences and try to find common ground. Governments have a responsibility to protect their citizens' human rights, but they also need to be mindful of cultural sensitivities.
I think that's where civil society organizations come in. They can help bridge the gap between different perspectives and advocate for human rights at a local level. They can also hold governments accountable when they fail to protect their citizens' rights.
Absolutely. But it's not just about holding governments accountable. Individuals also have a responsibility to promote human rights. We can do this by educating ourselves and others about human rights issues, speaking out against injustice, and supporting organizations that are working to protect human rights.
I think that's a great point. It's important for everyone to be aware of their own role in promoting human rights. However, one of the biggest challenges is holding perpetrators of human rights violations accountable. It can be difficult to gather evidence and prosecute those responsible, especially when they are part of powerful institutions.
That's true, but there are ways to overcome these challenges. Technology can be a powerful tool for both facilitating and hindering human rights efforts. For example, social media can be used to spread awareness about human rights abuses, but it can also be used to spread misinformation and propaganda.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Technology has the potential to connect us and bring about change, but it can also be used to divide us and perpetrate injustice.
I agree with everyone's point so far. It's important to remember that human rights are not just about protecting individuals, but also about creating a society where everyone can thrive. We need to work together to promote human rights and ensure that everyone has access to the resources they need to live a life of dignity and respect. As we summarize the key points regarding human rights violations, there are various ethical theories that can be used to address these issues, including feminist ethics, cultural relativism, rights-based ethics, utilitarianism, distributive justice, and libertarianism. These juries provide different perspectives that can be used on how to approach and address various aspects of human rights violations, with some emphasizing individual rights and autonomy, while others focus on collective well-being and fair distribution of resources. The choice of which jury to apply depends on the specific context and values at stake, and by understanding and applying these juries, individuals and organizations can work towards creating a more just and equitable world for all. As we delve into these critical issues surrounding human rights violations, it is important for all of us to take a moment to reflect on our own actions and beliefs.
Human rights are not just a concept, they are the foundation of a just society. Let's work together to protect and uphold these rights for all people, regardless of race, gender, religion, or any other difference. Difference in someone's life. So let's stand up for what's right and create a better world for ourselves and future generations.
In the face of human rights violations, it's easy to feel powerless. But remember, every single person has the power to create change. Use your voice, your vote, and your action to make a difference. A small step counts towards a larger movement for change. So let's continue to educate ourselves, speak up, and take action against human rights violations. Together, we can build a world where everyone's rights are respected and protected.
Human rights violations are a stain on our society. It's up to all of us to do our part to end them, whether it's voluntary, donating, or simply spreading awareness. Every action counts. Let's work together to build a world where everyone can live with dignity, respect, and freedom. This is your host, Ivy Henete. Stay tuned for more episodes of Ethics Unveiled, Navigating Social Dilemmas in the Philippines. Thank you.